All right. So welcome to the 40th annual Harney County Migratory Bird Festival. We're really excited to be doing this virtually so that we can continue to share Harney County with everyone from wherever you are. So our festival is made possible every year by a really enthusiastic and committed group of community partners and community members that are a part of our planning group. So you'll see everyone here on this page has really put in a lot of time and energy and enthusiasm to make this possible. So we're going to ask that everyone stay muted. If you are just coming in, please mute yourself. Or if you've somehow unmuted yourself, please stay muted. If you're having bandwidth trouble, we do ask that you take your, go ahead and turn your video off. So, I'm Janelle Wicks. I'm going to be your host this evening and for the rest of the presentations throughout the weekend. I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, and I'm really excited about being able to bring all of this to you as part of our 40th Annual Bird Festival. So what you can expect tonight, we're going to have approximately 40-minute presentation, but this presentation is going to be a little bit more like a class. There's going to be time for Q&A and interaction, so we should all be able to walk away having learned something really exciting. Please remain muted throughout the presentation tonight. Feel free to type your questions or comments in the chat box. If you haven't found the chat box yet, it's going to be at the top or bottom of your screen, a little talk bubble. If you can't find it there, you'll go to the 3 little dots for more and check there. So tonight's presentation is eBird and Community Science by Dr. Teresa Bird Wicks. Teresa Wicks has joined Portland Audubon in 2018 as their first full-time Eastern Oregon field coordinator. Having grown up roaming the forests of Southern Oregon, while her father climbed trees, she formed an early obsession with birds, which led to a lifetime full of birds and nature, and earned her the nickname Bird. Working on avian conservation and monitoring, policy and collaboration work, and connecting folks from Harney County and throughout Oregon to birds and conservation being done in the Harney Basin is no small task. With a BS in Natural Resources and Wildlife Conservation, a Master's of Science in Environmental Education, and a recently completed PhD in Environmental Sciences from OSU, Bird is uniquely qualified for the diverse demands of this position. Tonight, Bird is joining us to present on eBird and community science. So again, please remain muted for the duration of the presentation and write your questions and comments in the chat box. There will be a short question and answer session at the end of the hour. Take it away, Bird.
All right. Hello, good evening. I'm Bird. I use all pronouns, and as Janelle mentioned, I am a conservation ornithologist and educator who lives and works out on Wadata Paiute land in Harney County. And I'm really thankful that you're all joining us tonight. This workshop is going to be a series of opportunities to sit and learn, and also to actively interact and learn. So I'll start with some information about why eBird, the value that eBird can provide to you and to the scientific community and to conservation efforts around the world. And then we'll go to the eBird website and go through how to set up your own account. Everybody will have a little bit of time to work through that. That's the easiest part, probably, of navigating eBird. And then I'll walk you through some of the key functions of eBird and then how to do data entry through the website. And then for people that are interested in learning how to use eBird Mobile, which is the app, we'll also be going through how to set up the app on your phone. And then we'll have some time for other questions outside of all of that at the very end of the presentation as well. I think that my screen froze. All right, I'll try this one more time. I apologize. I don't know why. PowerPoint isn't wanting to talk to my presentation. Well, maybe I will keep it here for now. All right. So I want to start out by encouraging everybody to think about why you keep bird lists. So I'm not talking about using eBird, but if you keep track of the birds you see during the day, what are some of the reasons that you decide to keep a list? I know for me, I am notoriously not good at keeping a list. My bird lists often just stay in my head, but when I do keep them, it's often because I've visited somewhere new for the first time, or maybe like this year, I started trying to keep track of my bird lists because it seemed like the birds were arriving in the Harney Basin earlier than normal. And I realized that keeping track of my lists on paper would actually allow me to be able to notice trends like that myself. And so think about those reasons why you like to keep your bird lists, and we'll talk about how those translate to eBird. So first of all, what is eBird? eBird is a global, kind of like a data management program. So you have the ability to keep track of your digital bird/life list. So a lot of people, I know birders that have been keeping paper bird lists for like 50 years that when eBird came out, actually transcribed all of their lists into eBird. So they literally have a life list of all of their birds in eBird. So when they want to know how many birds they've seen, all they have to do is log into eBird and they'll get statistics like how many species you've observed, how many checklists you've submitted, if you've submitted photos, how many of them you've submitted, audio recordings, etc. So really, eBird is a record of your bird sightings. If you are notoriously bad at keeping track of lists like I am, it may be a partial record of the birds you've sighted, but still, it's a way to track all of your personal sightings wherever you go. eBird is also a global community science project. So people from around the world enter all of their bird data into eBird, and this allows scientists the ability to track specific bird species, trends in community compositions, and it also allows scientists to set up their own community science projects that use eBird as a portal for them to be able to enter their bird data. And so eBird is also a way for all of us to contribute to science. As I mentioned before, eBird functions kind of like a really, really big database for bird sightings. And it also provides people with the opportunity to search for hotspots and checklists. So one of the things that I really like to do with eBird, and I'll show you how to do this later, is if I really want to go out of the Harney Basin, for example, maybe I want to go to the coast. And if I really want to see a specific bird species like a sooty shearwater, I can actually use eBird to help me find where people have been seeing sooty shearwater so that I know where I might want to go on a trip. And I'm sorry, you might be seeing a gray bar on your screen and I can't seem to make Zoom remove that bar right now. All right, so a little bit about why eBird is so valuable. So this, this graph is a graph that's an updated in late 2020 by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it shows the number of observations and the number of checklists over time. So the axes here on the left that says millions, that's the observation axis. And then the orange numbers on the right are the checklists axis. And so we can see from this line that in the peak of 2019, 2020, there were about 21 million bird observations made and entered through eBird. And then the peak of checklists in the 2019, 2020 period peaked at about 120,000 checklists. I have my number right. So that's a lot of people. There are millions of people around the world that are submitting checklists every day and making observations of millions of birds every year. It's become a pretty impressive thing. If you look at the trend line from 2002, when very, very few, well, nobody was really using eBird at the time because it hadn't come out yet, but as eBird was introduced, you can see that it kind of grew slowly and then it really just took off after 2010. I think as birders realized that it was an easy way for them to track their birds and a way for them to contribute to science. So, okay, PowerPoint doesn't want to talk to eBird today. So we're gonna not be in presentation mode and see if that will help us. One more try. All right, so this animation, I included a couple of animations that Cornell Lab of Ornithology created, and these animations show bird population abundance or relative abundance throughout the year in North America. And all of these animations are based off of models that were created using eBird data. So it's not necessarily like one for one, a person saw one sandhill crane, you know, and its dot showed up in this animation, but the trends in populations throughout the year were used to create this graphic. And so there's a series of them that are pretty cool, and I think highlight why eBird can be so important. So this first animation is for the Ross's goose. Up to half of the world's population of Ross's geese actually migrate through the Harney Basin every year. And if you watch really, really closely, you can actually see the Harney Basin turn like a really dark purpley blue color. And that, according to this relative abundance scale, is high relative abundance of Ross's geese. And so as the year progresses and you hit migration, you can see them moving up into their northern, you know, the Arctic area where they nest, and then they move back down through North America. And the cool thing about this animation is that, you know, because it is based on observations that people are making, we actually start picking up those really specific paths that birds take when they migrate. We've learned a ton about how bird phenology is changing based on, you know, climate change. So as spring warms earlier, we've actually been able to use projects like eBird to start showing that swallows are showing up in places in the north earlier than they were previously. And eBird is a really big part of a lot of this trend tracking that we've been able to do. So this is Sora, one of my very favorite secretive marsh birds. And the neat thing about this animation is that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, at some point several years ago now, they've changed the animation style they're doing, but they used to do animations that were very much based on checklists. And so you could see, as people were reporting checklists that included, say, a Sora, you could see them kind of light up on the map. And you know, they've switched to this more model-based and more maybe high-tech animation, but it's really cool because the way that the checklist trend used to go for the Sora was really, really similar. So it's just fun to be able to see where people are seeing Sora as they're seeing them throughout the year. And I have one more, it's a yellow warbler. One of the really cool things about this is you can see that yellow warbler are found throughout so much of North America, but that their relative abundance is actually not the same throughout the continent. And it's just really cool that this is another way that all of us, when we participate in eBird, we contribute our checklist to eBird, we're helping scientists be able to say, you know, like with the Ross's geese, this one area is really, really important for bird populations. So overall, there are many, many community science projects in eBird. I'm going to focus on this one for now. Then we're going to go through and do some interactive work trying to set up eBird and helping people figure out how to enter data. And then at the end, I'll talk again about Project IBIS. But I wanted to highlight this project because it's a project that we do out here in the Harney Basin. So Project IBIS is Portland Audubon's project to inventory birds in the Silvies floodplain. And we basically ask anybody that's coming out to the Harney Basin from January to October, we'll accept data year round. Last year we focused on January to October because after October, the bird populations tend to not change a whole lot. But basically the protocol all uses eBird for data entry. It's a really simple protocol that involves driving around the Silvies floodplain, which is just south of Burns, and targeting 6 specific properties to look at what birds are using them. In 2020, we had over 80 hours of data collection at our 6 sites, and we had 101 species from 5 different guilds and 63,878 individual detections. This project is the first concerted effort to start actually looking at you know, inventorying what birds are using the floodplain and trying to better understand connections between land management and these species and how they're interacting with the floodplain. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna do, and I'm sorry if some of you already have eBird accounts, this is one of those workshops that I think can be appealing to people on a pretty big, broad spectrum. So we're gonna start with the setting up an account and then hope that we can, you know, also meet the needs of people that maybe already have eBird accounts. So I'm gonna send in the chat the link to eBird. And then we're gonna go to eBird's website. So here is the link. That didn't work. All right, so you should have just received the link to eBird's webpage in the chat. If you click on that link, it should take you to their website, and you should see, I'll share my screen again. You should see their website, and it will look like this. It's possible the bird that's on there will be different for what you are looking at because the bird does change every time you go to their homepage, which is actually kind of fun. So to create an account, you'll click on the sign in and it'll take you to this page. If you don't already have an account, all you need to do is scroll down and find the blue Create Account button, and then you need to just come up with a username and a password, and it'll also ask for an email address. So whatever email address you want them to contact you at, mostly they contact you only to give you updates on, for example, how many checklists you submitted for the month, or they'll contact you if you submit a bird that a reviewer finds questionable. They'll use your email account to contact you for that. So I'm going to go ahead and click sign in. I'm going to give everybody maybe 2 minutes to go ahead and work through setting up an account, and then we will talk about the different functions of eBird and features of eBird before we start talking about how you enter data. While we're going through the process of setting up an account, does anybody have any questions? Maybe you could send them in the chat if you do, because I think that might be the easiest way to do this. But if you have any questions so far about what we've covered with eBird. Okay, so while people are working through, oh, there is a question in the chat. All right, so while people are working through setting up their eBird account or logging in if you already have an account, I'm going to go through some of the more important features to know about eBird. I would say the feature that I use the most, which doesn't actually contribute to science at all, is this explore function. So when you click on it, you have the option of exploring eBird data either through species or through specific areas. So the thing to note, though, is the explore species function up here where my cursor is will take you to the, it'll take you to an information page about that species, not to the eBird page. So it's a really important thing to remember, the relationship of eBird to Cornell. Okay, yeah. All right, so if you want to explore a species and you want to learn more about that species, so not places where it's been seen, you could type them in to this explore species function, and we'll explore long-billed curlew. And so it connects you to a page that will tell you if you have seen this bird. So is it in your checklist? Have you submitted a photo or audio of it? And in what year did you see it? And then it also has pictures, it has information about them, it has recordings. So if you thought that you heard one, or you thought you saw one, saw a bird and you heard it vocalizing, you have the option of being able to listen to some of the audio recordings to compare it with what you thought you heard. And then there's also the range map for the bird. So this map here, and then how many birds you've seen and how many of them have been reported on eBird. So I have seen 22 long-billed curlew, but in eBird, there have been 231,968 long-billed curlew entered, which is a really impressive number. And then you can also look at these weekly bar charts, which I'll show you later, that kind of give you an idea of when a bird is in an area. So you know if you're actually likely to be seeing it when you're, like when you might be birding in an area. All right, so the explore function that I probably use the most is this species maps function. And so if we really were excited about long-billed curlew and we wanted to know where we could find them in all of Oregon, we could type in this location, the state. So the weird thing about eBird is that you have to click on one of these links. So these places that came up when I typed in Oregon, you have to actually click on one to pick it. So I'll pick Oregon, and it's zooming in to where we can see all of Oregon, which is going to be a pretty coarse scale. And then you could say, oh, well, these really dark purple squares are places where there have been a lot of curlew reported, and these pale ones are places where curlew, very few of them have been reported. And so if you want to find somewhere where you're more likely to find a curlew, you can actually start zooming in on some of these darker squares. And what you find is that Harney County has some pretty dark squares because we have a lot of curlew out here. And so you can keep zooming in until you get to these little dots. And these little dots are all indicating hotspots. So they are places that people have entered as a place that they have seen curlew. With the advent of eBird Mobile, we saw many more of these tiny blue dots pop up, because if you are parked in your car and you're taking a list from where you're parked, you can actually geotag that list. And so it'll create a new little hotspot for that checklist. These big hotspot indicators are, oh, I called them all hotspots. I just remembered that eBird does not call them all hotspots. Hotspots are the ones with the flames. And just an eBird location are all of these tiny ones. So when you enter a new place into eBird, if you think it's a hotspot, you can actually suggest it to be added as a hotspot. Like if you think there are just a ton of birds there and it's worthwhile for eBird to consider making it an actual hotspot, you can do that. But so if we click on one of these hotspots, we can see that this is the substation pond on Highway 205. So that's an area that's south of Burns, north of the refuge. And we can actually click on that and look at all the sightings that people have seen, what the most recent time that a bird was seen there. So on what date, who was the person that saw it, how many that they saw. And so we could scroll down for long-billed curlew. There we go. So the last long-billed curlew at the substation pond was reported on April 2nd. And we could actually click on that checklist and see what other birds Dina saw at the substation pond. So this is one of the ways that you can start exploring areas where you might want to find specific species. So this function, using it that way, so going from species map and zooming in on a place you might want to go, is one way to start identifying places you might be interested in. You can also use explore hotspots, which I don't really know very many hotspot names, so I almost never use this bar here that says enter hotspot name. I almost always just choose to enter an area like Harney County. And then this cool thing comes up where you can see from these squares and this shaded bar legend on the right, that this really pale greenish color is 0 to 15 species observed, and this really red color is 600 plus species observed. So we're somewhere in the 300 to 400 species observed. And if we zoom in enough, you can start to see locations and hotspots, and they're color coded. So if you only had one weekend to come out to Harney County and you were trying to figure out, you know, what place could you go that's the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, you would click on this red point and it would tell you Malheur National Wildlife Refuge is the place that you should go. And you can go through and look at other people's checklists and whatnot and get an idea of what species other people have been seeing there recently. The other really cool thing about eBird is these bar charts. So you can use these bar charts to tell you what birds are most likely. If you had decided you were coming to Harney County for a weekend and you were going to go to Malheur because it's the place with the highest number of bird species in Harney County, you also could use this bar chart function to figure out what time of year is the best time of year to come out here for that weekend, which if you only had a weekend, probably you already picked when you're coming. But these bars that are really tall in the bar charts indicate a high number of birds. These bars that look more like dashes indicate very few birds, or you know, that they're rare or less common at that time. So if you really wanted to see a Eurasian widgeon at Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, your best bet is to come in early April or mid-ish October, according to this bar chart. So eBird is a pretty cool way to start planning trips. You know, I've used it on more than one occasion to figure out what places I should visit and things like that. If you are a lister, you can also use eBird to send you these target species. So if I wanted to know what species have I not seen in Harney County at any time of year, it would show me which species have been found in Harney County that I have not reported through eBird. And it would give me an idea of where I could find them, how likely I am to find them, things like that. So if you're a lister, you actually can also use eBird as a way to bump up your life list. And then the last thing I will show you with the explore function is this alerts. And so you can actually set eBird to email you a list of rare birds that have been reported in any area. And you can have them send them to you daily or less often, but it's another interesting function if you want to be able to see rare birds in the area that you are visiting or where you live. All right. Oh, this is a very good question. So really quick, before we move on to entering data, I did see there's a question about the relationship between eBird and Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So eBird was developed by Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. So it was developed by and it is managed by Cornell. So it's kind of like a subsidiary of Cornell at this point. I think when eBird first started, it felt more like a program, and now it seems like it's something that's kind of taken on its own life, but is still housed within the Lab of Ornithology. And then there was another question about whether or not eBird can help you with sounds, and it can. So when you're in the Explore Species area, you can, the caveat to this is that these recordings are all recordings that other people took. So the quality is not necessarily guaranteed, but you can click on these. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna unshare my screen for a minute so you can actually, you can hear it. So when people submit their audio recordings, we can talk more about how you submit recordings when we go through data entry, but when people are submitting a checklist, they can actually upload an audio file, and that audio file gets stored within Cornell Lab of Ornithology's sound and image library, which is called the Macaulay Library. That's this name right up here. And so then those songs become available to you when you're exploring different species through eBird. It can't help you learn songs so if you want a program that can like quiz you on bird songs and things like that, eBird's not good for that. But if you want a program that can help you with your, like if you think you heard, say, a long-billed curlew, and you want to be able to check that, eBird can help you with checking the sound that you think you heard. And I can talk more when we're done here about some other great ways to help with learning bird ID and especially birding by ear. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. All right. So we went through some of the features of eBird, and now we're going to go talk briefly about how to submit data. I want this to feel more interactive for people. So if you have a list that you want to practice entering into eBird while I'm going through this, and you already have an eBird account, I want you to feel free to practice with submitting the data. And then as you have questions, like if questions come up for you, I want you to feel free to ask them, because this is a really great opportunity to be able to do that. And if we were having this workshop in person, you know, we would get to go out into the field and practice using it in the field, but not this year. So when you want to submit data in eBird, you log in and you click on the submit button. And the very first thing it's going to ask you is, where did you bird? And the eBird has this pretty cool thing where it remembers all of the locations you've ever entered. And so I could, if I knew where I was, like which address range on Hotchkiss Lane I was at, I could click on one of these like personal locations that have been entered through the app, but I also can pick a very specific place, for example, the Burns Cemetery. And then the other option, if it's a place you've never birded before, you can click find it on a map. I'm going to use Harney County again. And it will bring up all of the hotspots and locations that are in Harney County. So if I know I'm birding in Harney County, but I don't know the name of the hotspot, for example, I can zoom in on the map and it will bring up all of these options. And when you click on them, they tell you where they are. So this is, wow, that's a really long way. So you can use these to figure out where you birded, and then you would click continue, and that becomes the place attached to your checklist. So the next thing you need to, next information you need to have to be able to use the online portal is the date. So we could say this was from today. And then one of the most important parts of helping eBird with, especially the scientists that are using eBird to look at bird population trends, is this observation type. So if you're traveling, that lets them know that you were, say, walking a mile. And you would click, so if you're moving while you're birding, you're gonna click the traveling button. If you're stationary, so that might be sitting at your table, drinking a cup of coffee and watching the birds at your feeder, then you're stationary. So if you didn't change your location at all while you're birding, then you're going to use this stationary function. Historical is typically only used, I think, for older eBird lists. And then incidental is like if you're out walking the dog or working in the garden and you're listening and keeping a bird list in your head, you would typically select incidental. This last option, other, is one that is most often used with community science projects that have really specific protocols. And those are all the different types of protocols are listed in here. So you're really only going to use any of these options in this other list if you are participating in a community science project that asks you to use one of these, to select one of these observation types. So once you've picked your observation type, it'll ask you when you started birding, how long you started birding, and how many people were with you. This is all really helpful information for understanding search effort. So how much time you spent looking for birds can be a really helpful part of analyzing data in the long run. And when you click travel, it'll actually also ask you how far you traveled. And so, oh yeah, I guess I have to enter even the fake information. And then it gives you this really long list of birds. They are organized by the American Birding Association organization structure. And you can ask eBird to show you rarities. So eBird automatically doesn't include rare birds in the list that you can see. You have to tell it to show you the rarities, which is, I think, a good call on their part. But so when you want to enter the birds, you can type the species in this box and it will take you right to that species. So rather than having to scroll through all the birds that you might see at that spot, you can use this jump to species area and type in the species you saw, and then you would type in the number here. And in the add details section, here's where you can describe information about the bird, what it was doing, was it flying from treetop to treetop singing the whole way? You can enter information like age and sex. So was it an adult, a juvenile, or immature? If you don't know the age, but you do know that it was male or female, you also have the option of entering like that it was an unknown aged male. And then you also can enter breeding code. This is pretty helpful for a lot of projects that look at bird phenology. So that's the different part of their life history as it's happening throughout the year. So eBird says choose the highest possible code. And so what that means is if there's a male bird that is singing, which would be this code here, singing bird, but there's also a female bird sitting on eggs on a nest, you're actually going to pick occupied nest because that's the highest possible code in regards to where they're at in the breeding season. So the information that is most helpful is that there's an occupied nest. So that's the information that you're going to put if you're providing breeding information. And so once you're done submitting all the different numbers and species that you saw, you'll click either yes, that you are submitting a complete checklist of birds you're able to identify. So that really what that's telling eBird is that you wrote down every bird you could identify and you're not intentionally or knowingly leaving any birds out. If you are recording a bird list and you are only recording a bird that's a rare bird, for example, then you're going to click no. And that helps the scientists with parsing out checklists that are not necessarily recording information about the community of birds that were in that place at that time. So a scientist that's looking for community information wants to only be using a complete checklist. And so that information is super helpful for scientists in understanding bird populations and communities. And then once you click that, and then you'll click submit, and it will send the checklist to eBird. I'm not going to submit this checklist because it is A, not complete, and B, not an actual checklist. I'm going to go ahead and take a minute to pause here and answer more questions, and then we'll go through into eBird Mobile. How does it differentiate seasonal plumage change or immature forms? It's a good question. So if you were looking at a like a second year bald eagle, for example, you would just submit that bird as an immature bird still. You could in the bird notes say it's a second year bird. I often do that with birds that, like bald eagles, have multiple subadult forms. So that's probably what I would do. If it's a non-breeding season bird, like a bird that is not in its breeding plumage, it's a really good question. I would probably say in most cases you would enter that bird as a well, so if you know, like with the shoveler, if you know that that northern shoveler is a male based on some part of its plumage characteristic, but it's not clear how old that, you know, drake might be, then you would probably put age unknown male, if that makes sense. And there are lots of variations within all of that. And I think, you know, adding notes to the comments on your checklist are going to be probably the most helpful way to differentiate between all those different things, both for you, but also for other people that are trying to use that data on the back end. Does anybody else have questions about the web portal for eBird? So we'll go over very quickly what it looks like to be using eBird Mobile, and then we should have time for questions after that. Okay. So I recorded this video using an app on my iPad, so it's not necessarily super high quality, and I apologize for that. So this is what the app looks like after you've opened it. So the first thing you have to do is download the app. Then you're going to sign into the app with your account information. And so the first time you use the app, the first time you use the app, it's going to go through I'm trying to think of a package is what they say. So you go through this thing where you tell it your preferences. Do you want your bird species name displayed as common name or scientific name or both? Do you want them in English? Then you tell it where you want your bird pack, and it will automatically recommend which pack it thinks you might need based on where you are. And what that really means is it's a checklist of birds that are most likely to be in your area. So if you were going to go, say, to India and you wanted to use eBird, you would need to make sure to also download like the India pack. So when you're in the app, you make sure that it has the right date and the right time, and then you click start checklist. If you are using the app, say you're walking around at Malheur National Wildlife Refuge headquarters and you're using the app to record your list, it starts the time at the moment that you open the app. And it also uses the date that is like in your phone. And so if you actually started birding earlier than that, you just need to make sure to check that time. You are going to tell it where you're birding. It will use the geolocation of your phone to give you a list of hotspots that are in your area. And then, just like in the website, you start to type in the species you're looking for, and you tell it the number you observed. One of the biggest differences between the app and the website is that in the app, you can enter a breeding code, but it does not allow for you to enter codes such as the age or the sex of the bird that you've seen. So like with the northern goshawk, seemed important to enter that it was an adult. So I entered that it was an adult in the comments section. So then once you've entered your whole list, you're going to click the review button. I sometimes will scroll to see if I thought that I missed anything. When you click review, it brings up so it'll tell you the number of species you've entered. So if you know you saw more than 17 species, for example, this says 17. If you know you saw 18, that's a good reminder to go back into the app bird list and figure out what bird you didn't enter. It will also now give you the option to say, were you traveling or stationary or incidental? So basically you're just making sure your information about, how long you made the observations and how far you went, how many people were there, et cetera. Like, this is your opportunity in the app to make sure that all that information is correct. And then just like in the website, you're going to tell it, is this a complete checklist? Yes or no. And then you're done. And it goes into your submitted checklist section in your app. The one thing that I have found that I'm pretty bad about in the app is I regularly start checklists and then, get distracted either talking to somebody or, I don't know, going back to work. And I will forget to submit the checklist. And so there's actually a section in the app where they store all of your your checklists that have not been submitted. So sometimes I can go back in and look at a checklist and say, oh, I remember that day, or oh, I have a paper list from that day too, and I'll finish that checklist now and submit it. I did once stop using the app for a really long time and had gone to a conference in Texas and had the opportunity to go to Aransas and found a non-submitted checklist from Aransas National Wildlife Refuge like 2 years after I started it. And I definitely just deleted that checklist because I did not remember anything else about the birds that I saw. So it's really helpful to check that list of non-submitted checklists regularly in the app to see if you possibly forgot to submit something. So that was the super quick, what is eBird, why should you use it, how do you use it, presentation. I am super happy to stick around well past the 8 o'clock deadline for people that have questions. If you guys have questions or you want help working your way through eBird. That
was really great. Teresa, thank you so much. If anyone, we do have a few minutes, has any questions about the mobile app, about hotspots, I was thinking, okay, how do you submit photographs?
I didn't go over that. Thank you for reminding me, Scott. So I personally have not figured out how to do it in the app, but in the website, let's go back to, let me share my screen again, sorry. So, all right. So if I had, a really great picture of a snow goose I wanted to submit, there's this section here where my cursor is that says media. And it says to add media, you have to save the checklist and then go to add media on the next page. So I will go to an old checklist and see if I can show you what that looks like from there. So this green button here that says add media will come up after you've submitted the checklist. And when you click on the add media button, it'll take you to this manage media page. And then, oh, I have a picture of this burrowing owl I can add to show you what that looks like. So and then it will just upload that media to your checklist, and it just becomes part of the checklist. If you have audio that you recorded, you would also click the add media button, and then you would select an audio file, which I don't actually have any audio files on this computer right now.
Great. We had a comment from Linda saying that the Merlin app also allows you to submit a photo directly to eBird. And a question from Helen. She has the mobile app packs for both Washington and Oregon and lives in Seattle. When she searches for hotspots in Harney County, it comes up with nothing. What does she have to do? Does she have to go to the website to get that information? Or is that a glitch in this? It's like a problem.
It does seem like a problem. Oh, well, I'm gonna go grab my phone really quick and see if what I see. I had forgotten that when they released the most recent update for Merlin, that they had added some stronger crossover between eBird and Merlin. I had totally spaced that, so I'm glad that somebody mentioned that.
Great, and while you're checking on that, Bird, I just want to let everyone know that we are now at 8 o'clock. So please, we don't want to take your whole evening, but I did just want to let you know that I have a few more things to share when Bird is done.
So, I would like to change my search radius. Okay. Whoa, it wants me to check New Mexico. Okay, I think I figured out what's happening, possibly for you, Helen. So I had to actually, I wish that I had the ability to connect my phone to my computer, but I'm going to attempt to show you by holding my phone up to the camera. So in the, oh no, it's not going to do it. Hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, so when you're in the nearby, so when you're looking at the hotspots part of the app, this is for King County. If I want to change it to Harney County, which is where I'm at, I need to go to edit. And if you are looking somewhere that is different than the place you live in, you have to, in the app, tell it to change the search radius. And when you click change search radius, it brings up this page where you can tell it how far you want it to go, or how far you want the radius to be, how long ago. And you also, up here at this very top part where this little like location arrow is, when you click on that, it gives you the option to enter a city, a zip code, or some other identifier. So for me, when I first went in there, and I tried to type Seattle, it was like, you don't live in Seattle. But when I told it I wanted it to change the radius, it just moved my Harney County circle up to King County. And so try that and see if that helps. And if not, then we'll see what else we could do to try to figure that out. And so Scott, the Merlin app, the Merlin ID is an app from Cornell Lab of Ornithology that is really helpful for walking through identifying a bird. So if you see a bird, for example, that maybe you've never seen before, so maybe it's the first time you've seen a mountain bluebird and you don't know that it's a mountain bluebird, you can actually, it'll help walk you through identifying this bird based on its color, where it's at, where you're at, and the vocalizations it's making and things like that to help you try to identify that bird. It's a really great app for, especially if you don't want to have to carry a field ID guide with you, but I think it's also a really great app for helping teach people the characteristics to be looking for when they're trying to identify birds. So if you don't have the Merlin app and you would think you would benefit from some assistance with identifying birds, I think it's a really, really great app to work with.
Yeah, and I want to mention, and also in response to Scott's earlier question about audio ID and help with that, that the Larkwire app is worth downloading. So, okay. And then a final plug for the Community Science Project, Project IBIS. You can access that information to participate in the Project IBIS surveys by going to Portland Audubon's website. And can you direct people from there? Like, what should they just search for Project IBIS in the search bar?
I'm gonna put, so this is the link to our Project IBIS. So that's our community science project that uses eBird out here in Harney County. And then if you are interested in being involved in community science and eBird, this is a list of all, or sorry, not a list, a link to a website that lists community science projects throughout the Pacific Northwest that use eBird for their data collection. So that includes Portland Audubon's Fern Hill project in Portland. That includes some coastal projects, some projects up in Washington. So it's a really great resource, this second link for participating in eBird associated community science projects throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, and with that, it's 8:05. We've gone 5 minutes over, but I just want to run down and show you that there is a lot more happening with the Bird Festival throughout the weekend. So please go back to migratorybirdfestival.com to check out the full programmatic lineup. We've got presentations all day Friday, Saturday, with our keynote. Ken Kaufman is going to be presenting at 4 p.m. Pacific on the Centers of Survival, Bird Migration in the National Wildlife Refuges. So we're really excited about everything that we have scheduled for the weekend. We're also super pumped about our interactive mystery map for exploring Harney County, the Prairie Songs for a Feathered Heart. So if you are up for learning and exploring and trying to find the hidden treasure in Harney County, please check that out. It's live on the website, migratorybirdfestival.com, and on the Harney County Bird Fest YouTube channel, you can find all the videos. So again, I really just want to give a shout out to all our community partners, Fish and Wildlife Service, the BLM, Sage Design Works, the Harney County Chamber of Commerce, Portland Audubon Society, my organization, the Friends of Malheur, High Desert Partnership, and the Spark Mercantile, who is hosting the art vendor site that we usually are having in the Burns Gymnasium. So if you're looking to get some Harney County Migratory Bird Festival swag, you like our new logo, you need a hoodie or a t-shirt with that on there, head over to that. It's also linked on the Migratory Bird Festival website as well. Just click on the art vendor, virtual art vendor link at the top of the page. So thank you all so much for coming, and we hope to see you again throughout the weekend.